In this lesson, we explore the core of planning and scope definition within any complex project, the requirements documentation. You will find this document attached with this lesson. Please download and read through separately. As the project manager for the AIIMS EHR implementation, you have been entrusted with guiding this transformation in one of India's most prestigious healthcare institutions. The document that you see on the screen is not just a static artifact, rather, it is a living, breathing record of everything we intend to deliver and the value we plan to create. Now, I will walk through each of these sections, explaining how they come together and why they are essential to the project's success. We begin with the overview section. This sets the stage. In any large-scale project, especially one involving a critical service like healthcare, it is vital to be clear about what the requirements documentation aims to achieve. For the EHR system, the goal is not only to consolidate the diverse range of stakeholder expectations, but also to ensure a standardized, verifiable, and traceable set of requirements that guide every downstream decision. Here, clarity is your best ally. The overview ensures that anyone who opens the document, be it a developer, a vendor, or a senior executive, knows immediately what they are looking at and why it matters. It is surprisingly common to rush through this part, but setting the tone here avoids misalignments later. Next, we move into the heart of the document, the requirements table. This section is where rigor and discipline meet stakeholder empathy. Each requirement here will map to the traceability matrix, and it is captured with a lot of care. You will notice that each requirement has a unique identifier here in this ID column, such as BR001 or SR002, which is not just a numbering system, but a critical link to test cases, deliverables, and acceptance criteria. The table walks us through the requirement itself, the stakeholder from whom it originated, the category, and the priority. How we will determine it has been fulfilled, extremely important, that is the acceptance criteria in this column, how we will test it, and when we plan to deliver it. Take, for example, BR001. The system must improve overall operational efficiency. This came directly from business stakeholders, and it is a level 1 priority. To accept this, we are aiming for measurable reductions in patient wait times and data duplication. This requirement is not just an aspiration, it is linked to a defined test method, and it will be validated against live metrics. By designing each row with such a specificity, we prevent vague statements from creeping in, something that plagues many poorly written requirement documents. A vague requirement cannot be validated, and without validation, it cannot be said to be delivered. That is a core risk we mitigate with precision. Following the requirements table is the source mapping section. This often overlooked area is the provenance of our requirements. It tells us where each requirement came from. Did it come from an interview, from a legal mandate, from a benchmarking report? In this case, BR003, which mandates compliance with the data privacy regulations, comes from a legal compliance report. This matters immensely when we get to change requests. If someone questions the inclusion or relevance of a requirement, we can trace it back to the source and hold a grounded conversation. It also helps in prioritization. Knowing that a requirement stems from the government or a regulatory body often changes how it is treated in the backlog. The next section is requirements attributes summary, which effectively brings order to the diversity of inputs. It codifies the definition of each attribute, what we mean by a stakeholder, how we classify categories, what a level 1 versus level 2 priority really is, and so on. This might seem repetitive if you have already filled the table, but do not skip it. The reason we include this is that multiple people, often from different organizations, will refer to your document. By defining attributes, we eliminate assumptions. In my experience, assumptions about priority or acceptance criteria are among the top sources of miscommunication in a project execution. Clarity here builds consistency later. And then comes a crucial expansion, that is tailoring considerations. For our project, which uses a traditional predictive approach, this section helps shape how we evolve the requirements over time. For example, some requirements may be tied to specific releases. This section tells our teams how to handle variance. It subtly but powerfully introduces flexibility into a formal document. Acknowledging that the projects do not always unfold in a very straight line. Tailoring, in my view, is what separates a rigid requirement document from one that is actually usable. Moving further, we address the inputs and output cross-references. This optional section ties our documentation to the broader ecosystem of project artifacts. Requirements do not live in a vacuum. They receive information from documents like the project charter, the assumption log, and the stakeholder register, and in turn, they inform the scope baseline, the risk register, the communications plan, and other documents. This is where integration begins to show its value. One of the biggest pitfalls that I have observed in similar projects is treating requirement documentation as an isolated activity. But when you weave it into the planning fabric, it becomes a linchpin that influences risk, quality, procurement, and stakeholder engagement. And with that context, we come to the alignment and consistency section. This is not just a checklist. It is a quality gate. The requirements must be aligned with other foundational documents such as the quality management plan and the benefits management plan. For instance, SR003, our requirement to provide strong reporting and analytics, must align with the strategic KPIs in the benefits management plan. When we enforce alignment with other documentation, we make sure that every requirement serves a bigger strategic picture. This guards against scope creep, and it ensures that what we build delivers measurable value. Next, we introduce the non-functional requirements, NFRs. These are the extremely important heroes of system design. While functional requirements describe what the system must do, non-functional requirements, that is NFRs, dictate how well it does it. In the EHR project, performance, availability, accessibility, and auditability are all to be covered. Consider NFR 001 here, which sets the expectation that the system responses occur within 2 seconds. This is not a cosmetic preference. It directly affects the clinical decision making. Similarly, accessibility standards like screen reader support ensure we are not just designing for the average user, but for all users. The pitfall here is in underscoping NFRs because they are very hard to measure, and that's why we define them very clearly and tie them to specific validation steps. Our next stop is the data requirements section. Healthcare systems are data intensive, and that data must be accurate, secure, multilingual, and long lasting. We have defined requirements such as structured data formats, JSON or HL7 XML, input validation for demographics, retention for 10 years, and dual language interfaces. The importance of this section is often underestimated. Poorly defined data requirements lead to downstream issues in reporting, compliance, and even legal disputes. For example, our DR002 ensures that vital demographic fields are validated at entry. This may seem procedural, but for a major hospital, it is a frontline defense against incorrect diagnosis, billing errors, and administrative chaos. The section that follows is interoperability requirements. This is a defining feature of modern EHR systems. In a connected healthcare ecosystem, no system can operate as a silo. Here, we define our conformance with HL7 and FHIR standards, the availability to integrate with NDHM APIs, I will explain it in a moment, import data from lab services, and send encrypted referrals externally. For India, where NDHM, that is the National Digital Health Mission, is building a national health grid, this is not just a technical necessity, it is a strategic alignment with the national policy. Missing out on interoperability is not just a risk, it is a guarantee of obsolescence. And yet, many projects underestimate the complexity required here. We ensure clarity in our documentation so that integration engineers know exactly what is expected of them. Finally, we arrive at the conclusion section of this document. This is where we reflect and prepare for going ahead. Requirements documentation is not an end in itself, it is just a beginning. The conclusion reiterates this by confirming the document's role in guiding design, development, testing, and change management. It reaffirms that this is a living document and not a relic. As a PMP, I have learned that closure with clarity is just as important as initiation with inspiration. The conclusion ensures that the teams understand the document's utility beyond its creation. It reminds everyone involved, from developers to testers to stakeholders, that requirements will evolve, but their documentation must remain a source of truth. And so, as I close this lesson, remember that requirements documentation is not a formality. Rather, it is your map and your compass. When done thoughtfully, it enables alignment, it supports validation, and it prevents failure. When it is ignored or treated as paperwork, it becomes the silent cause of missed deadlines and unsatisfied users. In the hospital EHR project, this document is more than just words on paper. It is our commitment to delivering meaningful, measurable, and mission-aligned outcomes. Keep this approach close as you lead your own projects. Requirements, after all, are not just statements, they are promises. And every promise deserves to be honored with clarity, structure, and diligence. See you in the next lesson.